All right, welcome. My name is Justin, and I'm an addict. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I'm sober one day at a time since June 19th, 2015. And for that, I am beyond grateful. Welcome to the RICO 12 speaker meeting. We are an organization whose addictions include alcohol, drugs, lust, and sex, food, and gambling, just to name a few. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to learn the similarities of addiction and to gain tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. After our speakers finish their talk, we, the live audience, have the opportunity to ask questions of them. In order to ask questions, please type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you are hearing this podcast recorded and would like to participate as a live audience member, please go to RICO12.com, that's RECO12.com, to learn more and submit your email address there to receive weekly invitations to join in. RICO 12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping it that way. We gratefully accept contributions to help cover the costs of the Zoom platform, podcast platform, web hosting, and administrative costs. To contribute, you can go to RICO12.com/support, or you can click the link to PayPal that is in the chat of the live meeting or in the show notes. Last week's meeting was with Nikki M., and she gave us another massive boost of energy and straightforwardness in recovery. If you missed hearing that powerful meeting or any other meeting we've done, you can listen to them in the podcast format by searching for RICO 12 Speaker Meeting Podcast on virtually every podcast platform out there. If you find value in RICO 12, please take a moment to go to the podcast platform of your choosing and leave a rating and review. It helps us work our 12th step by carrying the message of recovery to more addicts who suffer. One more word about our guest speakers. When we line up a speaker, or in this case, speakers, for a meeting, we ask them to seek guidance on what and how to present so that they can reflect the light that they have been given by their higher power. That light will then inspire hope, meaning, worth, and growth in each of us, the listening audience. Now, let's introduce our guest speakers for today, Angie and Kevin H. They will be speaking on restoring intimacy in a marriage with addiction. Here's a little background on them. Kevin was born on a farm in the Midwest, born to a family of codependents, went on to be a military pilot and a successful businessman, married a fixer-upper that sent him and his family into a tailspin. In that tailspin and suffering, Kevin found the true meaning of humility and to learn that acceptance is the answer to all of his problems today, because absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. He needed to concentrate not so much on what needed to be changed in his family as much as what needed to be changed in himself and his attitude. Angie is a sexaholic with nearly 6 years of recovery. Married 33 years, she loves and lives the steps and loves to help others. Kevin and Angie, I'm excited to hear from you both about this topic. Take it away. The floor is yours.
Hi, Justin. Hi, everybody out there, my recovery family. Great to be back. Thanks for the invitation, Justin. Today, my portion is going to be talking about intimacy coming from the aspect of a sexaholic, lustaholic, and a love cripple, and how that, what it was like and what it's like today. So I'm hopeful that my experience, strength, and hope, something will resonate with you. Okay, so before we begin, just like I'd like for you to think of a couple of things first. One, are you willing to be rigorously honest with yourself and with your spouse? And two, are you willing to go to any lengths? So the big book on page 58 talks about how our stories disclose in a general way what it used to be like, what happened, and where I'm at today. And that's how I'm going to share my story. For me, the 12 steps work in all areas of my life and gives me a roadmap to live my steps in my daily life. I heard that once at a retreat, and I love the idea of I'm not just working my steps, I'm living my steps. And that is where I love to live today. So I'm going to give you a little preview of what pre-recovery intimacy looked like for me as a sexaholic and as a love cripple. And I was thinking about this, and my perception, my belief, my truth, I put it under this category of what I call counterfeit culture, meaning that it was completely tainted by everything false. My lust lied. My sexaholic was a disease of my attitudes towards love and relationship. And those of you that can relate to any type of addiction, it's always the next one will save me, or the next fix, or, next time it's going to be different. Next time it's going to be better. So those were all lies that I believed. I also believed in some sort of fantasy, unrealistic romance. And what that looked like to me could be attached to anything that Hollywood produced or even pornography. So I had that rolling around in my brain as what intimacy looked like as an addict. I also was very much into the sickness of expectations, assumptions, and resentments. So without ever speaking or knowing what I needed or what I expected my husband to know that I needed regarding intimacy, I just expected him to know. And I have learned in my recovery now that if I don't let him know what I need, then I'm just assuming that he does know. And that is a recipe for failure and disappointment. So I have learned to be more expressive for that. But in the past, my intimacy was based on expectations. Another thing I was thinking about was, the words, I love you. When I heard those words, when I was full on in my disease, really didn't mean a whole lot to me. I didn't have any feeling around it. I didn't have, it didn't feel, I probably would say I didn't feel worthy of it now that I'm thinking about it. So it was a very empty language to me that I was very unfamiliar with and probably, to be quite honest, fearful of. Another thing in my love cripple, my lack of intimacy, I was emotionally absent. So I was frozen. My past started from sexual abuse, which I know now for me just set me on a spiral of lies and false thinking about what love looks like, what lust looks like, and certainly having no clue about what intimacy looked like. So I was emotionally absent, didn't know how to express my emotions, wasn't feeling at all, just frozen to the core. So I've learned, how can I ever be intimate or vulnerable with another person if I'm emotionally absent? I also didn't have any boundaries, meaning, I didn't know what I needed, what it looked like, what a relationship looked like, where I started and where I stopped, and where he started and where he stopped. Very enmeshed, meaning if he was happy, I was happy. If he was sad, I was sad. If he was upset, I knew it was all about me. And that all affected my intimacy and my relationship, not only with him, but intimacy as far as anyone else out there that I would happen to have a relationship with. And here's the big one. There was no higher power at all. It was myself. It was totally my self-will, my disease, my everything that I listed. And guess what? My best thinking got me here. So that's kind of what intimacy looked like as an addict before recovery. So what I'd like to share with you now is what intimacy looks like today for me. And I'm going to break it down into 3 categories. And this really helped me in my recovery to understand what intimacy really looks like. We have a favorite saying that we say together is, into me you see. Intimacy, being able to really see that person, and that person becomes transparent. And an important thing that I have also learned is being able to separate the addict from the true, authentic person that I love and that I married 33 years ago. And so, first of all, intimacy to me is healthy communication, just the basic word. For me, in order to get to the other levels of intimacy, it has to be honest communication, has to be being able to be honest about what I need and being able to listen to what he needs and being willing to, reciprocate what he needs and be able to receive what he needs. And also, it works both ways. It's a two-sided thing. Willing to listen. And, we've talked about this in our own relationship. It's one of the hardest things, and it has been for me in my entire recovery, is to learn about intimacy and be really honest about it. As a sexaholic, that just really seems like an oxymoron, but it is. It's a foreign language because it was all based on lies and deceit and secrets. So therefore, to be able to be intimate in communicating, all of those things have to come forward. So willing to listen. The other thing I was thinking about is what part do I have in my own intimacy? And I just actually, I talk about how I live the steps. And so, when I'm disturbed, it's me, or when I'm learning about me, or when I have an awareness or a feeling or whatever, I need to get busy and look at myself. And I like to go to the fourth step to do that. Am I being selfish in some sort of way? Is that prohibiting me from being intimate? Is there some type of fear, like a core fear inside of me, which, I still struggle with because that's my number one trigger in life to act out? Am I being dishonest, or am I hanging on to resentments, or do I have any resentment? Can I be fully open to this person, to my husband, if I'm under the influence of any of those things? A big one that I love out of the big book is the statement, how important is it really? It's on page 420. It's all about acceptance. How important is it really? Is this going to make a problem in my relationship? Is it worth it for me to be right? Is it worth it for me to hang on to these? So it's really important that I can quickly, no matter the situation, get to my part and ask myself, how important is it really? Another thing that I need as far as healthy is nothing would be shame-based in our conversations, and also the idea of expectations. Then breaking down, intimacy into the other two levels, which was a real need for me, was just physical intimacy. And that just means no physical touch. That means holding hands, hugging, cuddling, tickling one another, all of those things that were really absent and terrifying for me as I went through my addiction. Those were really scary things. And we've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of work around just being physically intimate and having a loving touch. And then finally, sexual intimacy. And, what I'd like to share in that, for my experience, is that if you're in a marriage and you're experiencing some sort of sexual intimacy issues, have you taken the time for abstinence? Abstinence was one of the biggest things that helped me not only get sober, but to withdraw from my drug. But what it did was it took me down to like a baseline so that all of these things could come to fruition. So communication could work out, physical touch could work out, and that I was aware of those things. And so abstinence helped in many, many ways in learning what healthy sexuality looks like. And I've learned this from a friend. He's in recovery, and I always hear him say, do I need this? Is this a need? And if it's a need, I need to be looking at myself and seeing, am I emotionally present? Am I emotionally disturbed? Am I emotionally sober? And I must be completely honest. Because if I go into sexual intimacy with my husband and I am not in a place where I am emotionally sober, then I risk losing my sobriety. And that's how I see intimacy in my recovery. And so with that, I'm going to pass to Kevin.
Nice job. Hi, I'm Kevin, a proud member of Vasanon, and just really grateful. I'm going to start my timer here. My sweetie can watch it. My segment's going to be date night, saved, or marriage. And I'm going to talk about before recovery and then after while being in recovery as we are now. I've been a proud member of Vasanon going on 6 years here, coming up in a couple months. Extremely grateful. I got a lot of Vasanon folks out there in the country and in the world that I'm just so happy to be a brother to, or be a part of the organization. I'm going to start out with reading a little paragraph out of Married for Life. It's a book that is a fantastic book that my wife and I, one of the things we do in the mornings, we do meditations. We've been doing it pretty consistently over the 6 years, and it's a game changer, complete game changer for our marriage. And here's the one I'm talking about. It says, spending as much time together as possible. My spouse and I behaving like is my spouse and I behaving like a married couple these days, or like roommates? Well, for 27 years of being married, we were roommates. And then it says, one way to prevent the inner death of a marriage is to make sure you and your partner are spending enough time together. A relationship is a living thing. It's a living organism. And time is the oxygen it requires. But in the fast-paced age, you have to make time for each other. So synchronize your appointment books. It's simply a matter of priority. You will always have time for things that's most important to you. Since there are no longer two but one, let no one separate them, for God has joined them together. I wanted to start off with that because for us at the very beginning, for me and my addiction of working and just codependency, and yes, I call codependency an addiction. It's a dependency upon a dependency on others. So what it looked like prior to recovery is date night, how it saved my marriage. And you're going, well, what's that mean? You weren't in recovery. Well, I was married to a person who is sexual anorexia, which means, Angie had abuse as a child, and it's a flip of a coin when that happens. It can go to sexual anorexia, or it can go to more lust. But this one went to sexual anorexia. And in that time period, it makes the spouse feel like, hey, what's up with me? Why am I, not enough? Why am I in that point of reference of, hey, there's a problem here? And what date night did and how it really brought us together at the very beginning was it gave time, it carved out time when we said, okay, we're going to be together, even though we're not in recovery, but that one time, every so often, we're going to spend time together. And it was so healthy because it made me feel like, I was part of a marriage, even though we were part, kind of on two different tracks. And then after recovery has started, date night has taken on a completely different meaning. So when we both sat down, and there's 7 things I always like to point out that I came up with. And these 7 things: no assuming, no expectations, know your needs, no comparing, no you statements, talk from feelings, and stay in the moment. And in that stay in the moment, that means be emotionally sober. So I'm going to go through the 7 again. So it's no assuming, no expectations, state your needs and know your needs, no comparing, no you statements, talk from feelings, and stay in the moment, being emotionally sober. So, okay, so how does that help understanding those items in a control guide? Well, for me, if she says, hey, let's do date night and we're going to play a game or something like that, and that's part of our date night, and I have this expectation and I'm assuming and kind of pre-planning everything and what we're going to do, and all of a sudden we have a blow up with, between us, maybe a family member or something, and neither one of us wants to sit down together. Well, I have in my brain an expectation. And if I don't have those expectations, I can go, okay, sweetie, well, we're not going to do it. I'm cool with that. Let's take a rain check and do it some other time. And comparing, no comparing for me. Comparing is truly one of the deadliest sins out there because it takes away our personal identity. The other thing is just always communicating with healthy statements. No, you should have, would have, could have. I could always say, no, honey, you should have had this time together. Well, we can't do that. There's no should have because that implies shame. One of the things I've always enjoyed trying to do is also understanding how we feel, knowing our feelings and sharing them with one another, and knowing halts. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, sick, and stress. So if either one of us is, having 2 or 3 of those, we really kind of separate each other because we know that affects our time together, our intimacy. In the beginning, I always tried to communicate in a proper way, but I was always terrible. But I came up with a new acronym, THINK. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? If Angie and I were in a communicating way, and I can always think about in the communication way, it saves a lot of effort as far as coming together with intimacy and date night. As a husband, I'm the protector and the provider. And for me, the best way to be the protector is have a great prayer life. My prayer life truly is one of my best ways to protect, my family. I have 4 sons and I love each one of them so much. And they're amazing young men. And I know if I can pray for them, I try to pray for them every day. If I can pray for them, that's a way that I can help them and help Angie too. For me, being intimate, it is truly one of the most wonderful things coming together. It's a way that I can, and I always tell Angie, I was a love cripple. She's a love cripple. I tell her, I've always wanted just to learn how to love her. That's all I've ever wanted to do, was to learn how to love her in a proper and healthy way. And for us to be able to do that, it is to clean up both sides of our street, to work the steps with a sponsor in our both programs. And another way we're cleaning up both sides of our street is we're a part of another group called Recovering Couples Anonymous. And it's a fantastic 12-step program for couples that want recovery in a coupleship. And I'll read you what step 1 says in RCA. It says, we admitted we are powerless over our relationship, that our lives together has become unmanageable. We admitted we're powerless over our relationship and that our lives have become unmanageable. I mean, what a great step 1. And knowing how to get through that. There's so many wonderful tools in RCA, from fair fighting contracts, on knowing when to detach and not, intimacy contracts. And it's a wonderful 12-step program that has really, truly helped us too. And, for me, date night, it can be an amazing item in a person's life. What we like to do sometimes is we switch. Okay, if date night this week is mine, I'm going to say, okay, here's my needs. And if date night next week is her, here's her needs. And that might look like, hey, I like Yahtzee. I like to play a game of Yahtzee. So we'll play Yahtzee. She might want to watch Father Brown on Netflix. So we'll watch Netflix. We might want to go outside and go for a walk. We might sit on, the brown sofa and just kind of hang out and read. I'm just so grateful that, our particular needs can be different and I can respect her. And if I don't have expectations and if I'm not assuming and not comparing, I can actually truly be with my wife and listen to what she has. And, one other thing I wanted to say that we do a lot of is Fanos. It's Fanos. It's a wonderful thing. And it stands for, Fanos for couples is sharing exercise. It's an acronym derived from a Greek word meaning to shed light on or to connect and bring light to. It's to build, and the Fanos, Fanos, stands for, it's an exercise to go through, a daily exercise. It stands for feelings, affirmations, needs, ownership, and struggles. So Fanos stands for that, and it's an exercise to go through on a daily item. And I'm going to end up with my last item here. It's going to be out of one of my favorite books, Married for Life. It's a daily affirmation. And it says, there are two ways to go about marriage. One is to think about your needs. The other is to concentrate on the needs of your spouse. If each partner selfishly demands that the other meets their needs, the relationship will be characterized by disappointment, resentment, bitterness. On the other hand, if each partner lovingly strives to fulfill the other needs, the marriage is characterized to be mutually satisfied and joyful. You may fear that if you don't focus on your other needs, you'll be taken advantage of. But if you trust God and trust in God's wisdom and focus on your partner's needs, the likelihood is that you'll be doubly blessed. When your spouse senses that you have their well-being in mind and are trying hard to meet their needs, your spouse will usually reciprocate enthusiastically. Plus, you'll find there is additional satisfaction and joy to be found in serving the one you love, because truly it is more blessed to give than to receive. And with that, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you, friends. That was awesome. Kevin and Angie, thank you so much once again. I just loved the different perspectives, the wisdom, the accumulated wisdom that you guys have from your experience. The name of the book you were reading from was Married for Life, Inspirations from Those Married 50 Years or More, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. We had that question come in here. Okay. So before we get to the Q&A, you mentioned RCA, Recovering Couples Anonymous. Will one of you please take about 30 to 60 seconds to share a little bit about that fellowship and how that has helped you in addition to what you've already shared?
He's looking at me. Okay. What I like about it is that we get to meet with other couples that are on similar paths or have similar histories to us. It's people that are dealing with addiction within the marriage. It's an open, honest forum where each week we either have a topic or a step, and we share on those things as a couple. And it's just been such, like you just said, learning from others' experience, their wisdom. And I think for me, that's been the greatest joy, is knowing that we're not alone and it is possible to survive some of these crazy things that happens in people's lives, because they're going to happen. We just don't know what they are. And just dealing with addiction alone is crazy insanity. So it really helps to be part of another group.
And the core angle of RCA is she has her side she's working on. I have my side I'm working on. And the coupleship has its own side to work on. So it's a three-legged stool is what they say, as far as bringing healing to the coupleship.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that share and for clarifying that. I will be looking into that. Very good stuff. All right. It's now time for our guest speakers to answer your questions. I've received several from the audience, and we'll get to as many as we can in the next 20, 25 minutes. Let's see. Let's get to this one first. Somebody asked if you could please define emotional sobriety. That was a new term to this person who asked that question.
I'll be happy to. To me, emotional sobriety is purity of heart. It's a total acceptance of self and others. It's an absolute surrender to God. And it opens up a pathway to, this is my interpretation of it. And it opens up the pathway between me and my higher power. But another area of emotional sobriety is when we can stay in the moment and you're not thinking of the future. You're not thinking of the past. You're not trying to control, manage, fix, or anything, and just stay in the moment and be with someone. When I'm talking with Angie, I'm with Angie. To me, that's what emotional sobriety is.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. And it sounds like that was a definition that you read from somewhere, at least the first part. Is that correct?
It's one that I kind of made up, in my journey of working emotional sobriety all these years.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. All right. The next question, also from our live audience. This one's directed to Kevin. Was it difficult for you not to fall into sex addiction with your wife as that happened?
Was it difficult for me to fall? That's a fun question because I don't. My mind, my mind is not a necessarily that kind of an addict's mind, and I'm always trying to understand what lust is, because I'm the type of guy who get a chocolate bar and open it up and eat that chocolate bar for a week. I can have one little piece every day and be happy about it all. So for me, no, it wasn't. Okay. And another thing was our relationship was more based upon was based on sexual anorexia. So I was just thinking that's just the way everybody is, the world is. So I didn't know anything other than that. So, yeah. Do you have anything to add to that?
I can't eat the whole chocolate bar. I'm going to eat it all at once. So there we go.
Yeah, that's how I am too. Chocolate bar in front of me, I got to eat it all. That's good stuff. No, I think that's a good way to describe that too. That's something that it was helpful for me to picture. Thank you for that. Another question from our live audience. What would you have done differently if you knew then what you know now before you were married?
I would have joined a recovery organization before I got married and learned about all my character defects. I wouldn't have known what character defects I have because I have such high pride. I would have thought I was perfect, though.
It's a lot of acceptance, once you get into a program, and we have talked about the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, gosh, if we could have done this, we would have saved, 27 years but you know what, like it says in our recovery, especially Big Book, we go down these paths to help other people. And it was just acceptance of our path. I have talked to people who have started program 20 years ago and thought, oh, this really isn't for me. And then 20 years later, when they're completely broken and in despair, they're back in the rooms again. Mm-hmm. So I think that everybody has a path and there is no shoulda, coulda, wouldas. It's just where we are.
Thank you. All right. I have another question for you. Angie, you mentioned in your portion of the share, abstinence in marriage in order to find baseline, what that means. So tell me, in your experience, is there a recommended time frame for that, or what are your thoughts on that, on sexual abstinence even in marriage in order to find that baseline and get sober?
Well, if you are a member of SA and you're familiar with the White Book literature, it does talk about lust in the marriage bed. I don't know what page that is on at the moment, but it is a very good read. And for my experience, we signed a contract. It was a 90-day contract to start with, where and what we would be non-sexual. And that was to help me get sober. I would have never gotten sober had I not got my chemicals in my brain leveled out. And that's kind of what I mean by baseline. I had to know what sober felt like, not only emotionally, but physically, mentally, lustfully, all of those things. And so what happened for us was after 90 days, we came back and he wasn't ready yet because we were not in a place yet. So to answer your question, we kind of went month by month, and I think it was a total period of 7 to 9 months. I can't even remember now because it was years ago. But what it did was it helped us to learn each authentic person. Lust was being removed from the relationship, or the anorexia, or just the diseases in general. So for me, it took 90 days at the beginning, and then month by month, I've heard people with 30 days. But it needs to be mutual between the spouses and come up with a, contract. And also we had boundaries, what that looked like on defining our own sexual intimacy, what was okay, what wasn't okay. So we knew we didn't cross any lines or boundaries with one another.
And another thing I wanted to add is, so abstinence just isn't at the beginning of a person when they get into recovery. Abstinence can be any time while you're in recovery. Let's say a person is having problems in a job, and their emotional sobriety is all just blown up, and they're irritated, frustrated, and they have stuff going on. There's times in our process we would say, hey, I'd like to have, 30 days abstinence or 60 days just on what we're going through, so we can kind of heal emotionally on whatever's irritating us or frustrating us. It's such a wonderful tool. It's probably one of the strongest tools that we can have in our toolbox is abstinence, and communicate in a healthy way. Pass.
Thank you. And putting my sexaholic brain on, which is not hard to do. When I hear abstinence, it's the white knuckle. It's the just got to bear through this. And I know that's not exactly what we're talking about here. What are some activities that maybe you guys did during those periods to increase maybe emotional intimacy or spiritual intimacy with each other, and to learn what healthy physical intimacy looked like?
Well, my first reaction was, each one of us independently working our own steps and really, doing our own work independently. I was talking the other day to a sponsee or a friend, and one of the things that we did to help build intimacy and trust within us is we did like daily check-ins. And so we would actually have a time during the day, kind of like our date night, only it was on a daily, and it didn't have to be very long, to just kind of, mainly it was a feeling check, how you doing? How's your day? What's going on? Anything new? And it usually ended up talking about recovery and what that looked like for each one of us and together. So that was a really good tool, was just, again, going back to communication. Do you have anything on that?
Well, the saying, secrets keep us sick. So the most important thing is if I'm frustrated, and it could be the littlest secret. It could be, something that happened at work with, a coworker, and it's built up inside me, and I'm not sharing it. That's a secret. That's what I mean by secrets keep us sick. So if I can come home in a healthy way and tell Angie or tell one of my S&on brothers out there around the world, which shout out to all those guys out there, it helps have purity of heart. It helps us with emotional sobriety. So I just wanted to add that in there. Pass.
Thank you both. All right. Another question came in from our live audience here. Do you have any recommended readings and practices for single people to get ready for a healthy relationship? Any thoughts on that?
I know that, I've got some younger people that I'm sponsoring that aren't married, and they're not all younger, but they're very interested in sober dating.
Mm.
And so it's been a hot topic. And, I don't have any experience in sober dating, but I am definitely willing to learn. And, kind of the things that we're talking about here is just working a solid program and the honesty that goes with it. To just really know what I need before I go into a relationship, and being able to set boundaries with another person, what's okay, what's not okay. And, I was actually talking about this, the other day, and I know in our program, the whole thing about our definition about, not being sexually active unless you're married. And, growing up, it was like, well, you don't have premarital sex. You don't do this. You don't do this. But I never really fully thought about this answer. And this is my answer now, is because for me, lust played such a huge role that my brain was hijacked and I couldn't see things clearly. So lust lied to me in the fact that I don't even know this person because I'm so caught up in lust. And so that's the first thing that I would really encourage people that are single is to, if you are a lustaholic, a sexaholic, to really examine your motivations and to go into a relationship, wanting to be celibate and abstinent and really get to know that person and see if you're compatible, because lust, the glimmer goes away after a while, and then you're left with somebody you don't even know.
Thank you. Appreciate that input and that perspective. Kevin, you mentioned in your portion of the share about doing couple meditations very regularly. What do those look like? Is that like a guided meditation you're listening to together? Tell me what that looks like.
So I am so very, very blessed that my wife and we both thought this was an important thing for our coupleship. And what that looks like is, there's so many daily meditation books out there. Like I said, this one right here, Married for Life, is one. The Anon program has one. Pretty much every program has one. There's a book called Jesus is Calling is one. There's one by Melanie Beatty for codependency. There's one for inner child work, which is also one of my favorite books. So what we'll do is, I think we probably have, goodness gracious, probably a dozen of them now. And we have them in a kind of like a little leather pouch. And we'll sit down early in the morning around, 7:15 or 7:30. And what we would do, we're on another project right now in Bible in the Air. We're listening to Bible in the Air every day. But what we would do prior to that is read probably 6 to 8 of these daily meditations. And she'd pull one out and I'd listen to her, have a drink of coffee. I'd pull it out. She'd have a cup of coffee. And it was just kind of a way of having our morning coffee together. The key is in a coupleship is to have fun and to make it fun. If we go to a recovery meeting sometimes, like down in Kansas City, we'll go out to a restaurant and have kind of a date night around that. So everything you can do as a couple to make it fun. Sometimes I'll make her a cup of coffee. Not as much, but sometimes I'll do that. We'll sit down together. So it's just the whole process. And in the evening also, we come together and kind of I do an examination of conscience, but we end with a prayer every night. Every night for over 2 years, we've been ending with a prayer together. And so we start our morning off with prayers and meditations, and then we end our day with a prayer. So that's kind of what we do. Pass.
I just want a little input on that, Justin, is that, in the world of intimacy, some of those topics are really hard topics that we come across in our daily readers, especially for codependency and Al-Anon issues and just different things. And I will tell you, I've had some of my best growth learning about where he's coming from and actually how it applies to me, because I am a double winner. So it was like I'm learning both programs at the same time. And it was like a lot of conversation starters. And sometimes, early on, it was really uncomfortable and I didn't like it, but we got through it. And now we're on the other side. So
it's another day. So yeah, for a lot of you S-Anons out there, you Anons, if you haven't heard any of the daily meditations from the SA, what's it called?
essay, the real connection.
The real connection. It's amazing. I mean, it will give you a whole new perspective of that world. And that's what we do. We read each other's books out loud so we both can grow together. Pass.
Thank you both. We have one more question that came in from the live audience. I think we might have time for one more after this. We'll see before we close up. But the question here it follows up on the one that you guys just talked about, but it's coming from a couple's different phase of life. He says, my wife and I have a schedule of things we do that we consider important, and I would like to consider more. But we have 2.5 kids and usually don't have time for our current plans together. How can a parent find time to do these couples' activities?
I admire anyone who is in that phase of life working on a recovery. My bottom came at the end of, not quite at the end of parenting, but our children were becoming adults. And so our time period is a little bit different. But, we were reading, and it might have been in his book that he's talking about, but whatever is a priority, we always find time for. And the thing is that it doesn't have to be like a huge, elaborate time period. It's just like I was talking about, just finding a few minutes during the day just to check in with one another and be present. And I find I do pretty good in the mornings because my brain hasn't had a chance to start working on the day yet. And so that works for us. So sometimes we have to get up a few minutes early to get it in. But it's whatever works, And the other thing that we've done for our intimacy is send little text messages to each other during the day, just like a emoji heart or love you or a photo from something that we had fun together doing. So it's just staying connected. Doesn't have to take a lot of time.
And then one thing I want to add, this is where you work your traditions with your family. So this is tradition 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal progress for the greatest number depends upon unity. So that's where you sit down and you have a group conscience on, hey, can 10 minutes earlier help us out in this area of coming together as a coupleship? We both have to come together with those thought processes.
And it's not perfect. It's not going to perfectly happen every day.
No.
So if we're saying it's every day, but if we get, 3 or 4 solid days in a week with meditations, that's successful. That's way more than we used to do. And we're still growing together. So,
yes.
Awesome. Thank you both. Before we close up, do you have any closing words of wisdom that you would like to share with us?
Well, I always like to say, stay on the path. The path is narrow, the ditch is wide, and learn to live your steps because it is a roadmap for a wonderful life. I do experience most days happy, joyous, and free. And even if a disturbance comes along, I have tools now to help me get through it. And I don't have to spiral down into a dark, isolating place anymore. So that would be my suggestion, is to stay on the path.
And for me, my final words is, if you're a spouse of anybody and you give the other person shame, more than likely the other person's going to go into addiction or isolation or depression. So for me, my healthiest place to be is to focus on myself and not give any you should have, would have, could have, then keep the focus on myself. That's how a coupleship really grows fast. Thank you.
Thank you both. Kevin and Angie, I'm so happy that you were able to come on and give us this little talk and answer these questions for us. That was a great RICO 12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. If you have any other questions, please go to rico12.com/forum and join in our community and ask those questions and answer others' questions that will come up. I invite the audience to come back next week. Our speaker next week is Michael, and his topic will be powerful and thought-provoking. I've heard him speak before, and it moved me to immediate action. He will be speaking on the power of living life like a drug addict in recovery. If you have not yet gone to rico12.com and submitted your email address, you only need to do it once. Please get on the invitation list so you can join us live each Friday at noon Central Time. We are looking to fill guest speakers in April and May right now. So if you would like to give it a shot, reach out to me through the website and we will get it lined up. Angie and Kevin have chosen the prayer of St. Francis to close us out with and to send us off into the rest of our day. Have at it.
This prayer is it's conference approved. It's in the 12 and 12 step book.
Yes. It's called the Prayer of St. Francis. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved, for it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Keep coming back, everybody. It works when I work it. So work it. You are worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine.